Hey guys, today we have a special guest, John Pace, the founder of Rolling to Win. How you doing, John?
I'm well. How about yourself this morning? This morning here, evening there, I think.
Yeah, it is evening here, man. It's been a pretty big day, but yeah, an
Nice.
enjoyable one. Enjoyable. The sun's starting to come out. So yeah, I guess if you'd like to introduce yourself, tell us, a little bit about what you're up to at the moment. Yeah, maybe just start with your
Sure
current
thing.
project, Rolling to Win.
Right,
Let us know a
right.
little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah. Currently, I am the the program I'm working on is in final development for like it's a coaching platform where where I take on clients who are really looking for some purpose in life. I get them some physical training in there too, because you sort of have to change both your mind and your body to move forward with your best goals. And really, in the final phase of that, we're right at 26 days out, and I've got the entire client side all built out, ready to go. So the program is I just finished up like all the cool stuff yesterday. So now we have to get like all the other cool stuff going. But I'm very excited about all of it. I had tried some coaching before, but realized that just fitness coaching wasn't really it, because I wasn't making the connection to get people to change their mindset about some of the things. So people were being stuck in some of their old habits. And with the program that I developed is to get a guy out of the old habits and sort of become sort of a new person at the end of it, as have a new direction. And that's the whole goal, really. I mean, we all want to grow in life, so that's where I wanted to really step in and give my hand. So.
Oh, that's awesome, man. It's a very noble cause. And it is that just for people with spinal cord injuries, or you're working with able-bodied people, other wheelchair users?
Right. I speak a lot to other wheelchair users, and most of my clients are all able-bodied, to be honest, because I don't really know why, just whoever I resonate with. However, I've got the special heart for the spinal cord injury community. Obviously, I'm a T11 myself. T10 complete, but my T11, T12, and L1 got crushed in the fall that I had 6 years ago, which was very interesting time. That was probably the hardest time of my life that I didn't put my own self through. We'd all in my 20s. I definitely gave myself the hard road to go down. But anyway,
Oh, really?
that's a whole other thing.
A little bit of self-punishment in your 20s?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I thought I was having fun, but really I was, just sort of creating a lot of struggle in my life that I didn't realize that was struggle. I thought I was doing what I wanted to do, which I was doing what I wanted to do. It just wasn't any good for me. And
Was
then around the time I was 27, I sort of stopped the foolishness of drugs and that sort of thing, and tried to get sober from alcohol, and was doing a pretty good job. I managed to get into like a little Bible college right around the time I was 30, 31. Then I got married, had a child, dropped out of the Bible college, got back into drinking. Was really living like a shit life, to be honest. Like I was working hard every day, making good money, but I really wasn't getting along with my family unit. And then I came upon, to back that up just a step, I had started a company that I was working on utilities construction. So going into apartment buildings and rewiring apartment buildings for the internet and all that stuff. Um, was doing really well, but the company that I was working for there in Nashville ran out of money and put everything on hold until they got their new fiscal budget under control. And when they were on hold, I came for a visit here. I live in Virginia now, and this is where my family is from. So I came for a visit here, and my mother had bought a home for my nephew. My nephew is very autistic and really has a hard time caring for himself. So she had intended for his father and him to live there together. And I just went to visit him, was like, hey man, how's it going? He's like, yeah, come on in and see my house. I get in there and it is piled up with trash. Like the kid would like eat something and drop it in the floor. Like he was 19 at the time. I'm wanting to say 19. And his dad was nowhere to be found. Well, come to find out, his dad had had a girlfriend and the kid had a crush on her. So that caused some static between him and his dad, and he ran his dad off, all kind of stuff.
Oh wow.
Anyhow, so I took on the project to help him get cleaned up, straightened out, and really hoping to get his dad back in his life so that he'd have somebody to care for him. And about 2 weeks into that project, he was pretty well cleaned up. Maybe 3 weeks in, but my grandfather asked me to come work on a roof with him. And typically, like if you wanted to spend time with him, you had to go work with him because he's always working, always doing something. So I wanted to hang out, and I went to work on the roof. The first day we got everything torn off, so everything was going well. And then it's like the second day out is I put a tarp on the roof, and because it looked like it was going to rain, and as I was laying down some like wood, like I just guess wood boards here and there to keep the tarp from blowing off, I was getting over to the edge to put one right on the edge, and I knew like the tarp was over top of the edge, kind of like out here. And I'm gingerly stepping toward the edge, like just nice and easy, nice and easy. And just made that wrong step right there at the end and went right off the roof. And I think the fall was probably only about 12 or 16 feet, but the way I landed, my body just kind of like, I landed on my
Uh,
shoulder, and then the rest of the momentum from my body hit at a weird angle and burst fractured those three vertebrae.
oh wow. And did you have a
So
pretty
it
good
did.
idea straight away of what had happened?
Um, well, I had my eyes shut and was like, "Ooh, man, my leg! Like, what am I stuck on? My legs are stuck straight up in the air." And I opened my eyes and I'm like, "Oh shit! I'm just sprawled out in a heap on the ground." So,
All right.
it evidently, when my spinal cord or spine snapped, my legs were straight up in the air, and it felt like they had stuck in that position because everything went limp from there. So
Yeah. Okay.
right
That.
away, I was familiar with spinal cord injuries, neck injuries, and stuff. I'd done first aid in the Boy Scouts, first aid in the Coast Guard, all that sort of thing. So the signs were there. Somebody came and tried to pull me out of a bush. I was like, hands off. You just have to wait till somebody gets here to stabilize stuff and get
Yeah.
moving. So this little area is not really well known for its medical care. So it took about an hour for an ambulance to get out to me,
Oh
and
wow.
then they couldn't get to the place in the yard where I was. So they had to bring the gurney, like four-wheeling the gurney back to where I was, and then eventually they get me loaded up on that thing, and every bump, like which I know that you've probably felt similar stuff, but every little move, every little thing hurt, and it was definitely the worst pain I'd ever been in.
Oh really?
As we're going down to finally get loaded up in the ambulance, I think this is kind of funny, and they start cutting off all my clothes. I'm like, do we really have to cut off all my clothes? They're like, yeah, we have to. So I'm like, all right, well, to add insult to injury, here we go. And then they're driving super fast, and it's really curvy around here because of the hills and the mountains and stuff.
And you're just in the back
And
with your junk hanging out.
yeah, right. They covered me up with a sheet. They're like, "We'll
Oh,
put a sheet
that's
over
nice
you."
of them.
Like, gee, thanks. That's better. Uh, do you have to cut the laces out of my boots though? Like, did you have to do that? And as we're going along, they're hitting bumps and they're going around these curves. I'm like, slow down. I'm not dying. I have a spinal cord injury. My back's broken, man. Like, I'm not bleeding out or nothing. There's no need to be just driving super fast. And eventually get loaded up into a helicopter and all kind of stuff, which that just,
Oh wow, you.
they, yeah, I got helicoptered out, and like 'cause they took an ambulance to like a big church parking lot, and then a helicopter came in and flew me off to Carillion and Roanoke, which is about an hour from here. And
So you are a fair way from anything. Pretty isolated.
Yeah, I mean, there's a hospital here in town, but they just don't handle that sort of thing. It's a small
Yeah,
hospital for an aging community. You know, like the kids here um, go to school and really look to leave and never really come back, only to visit grandma or what have you. And, which is
yeah,
kind
okay,
of sad. A lot of communities are going that way, and then the community just ends up falling apart. You know, like all the buildings are in disrepair and things like that. So it's kind of sad because I remember what it was like when it was booming in the '80s, which was a long time ago. I was a kid; I wasn't a grown up in the '80s, but you know,
yeah.
everything was very active, and there was a lot of people. I think there was something like 70,000 people in this area back then. And now there's only 30,000. So that's a huge
Oh,
deficit from what it used to be.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So makes sense that there's not really great medical facilities there. Um, what
Yeah,
was
you
what
can't even
was
have
going?
children here. Like if you have a kid, you have to go an hour away to have a kid.
All
Sure enough,
right,
like yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely not a place you want to break your back, is it?
No,
So,
no, I never thought it happened for sure.
what was going through your head when you're in the helicopter? Because, like, I've been on a chopper a few times, and it's a odd enough experience when you're not dealing with a medical trauma.
Right, right. Well, from what I recall, like that was my first introduction to the pain medicine. Finally, was on the helicopter ride. So some dude like with a big helicopter helmet, and you know, like I guess that they had you can't hear anything in a helicopter, you know, just the helicopter, and that so they shot me with a fentanyl shot to kind of take away the pain. And I was like, not working, not touching
Yeah,
it, dude. And he's like, well, I've given you literally all I can give you. So um, I probably fell asleep after that, you know, because fentanyl probably does
yeah,
that. So, but I do remember waking up, or you know, like there's no way I was awake that whole hour. I don't think.
yeah,
I don't think. So I remember like getting unloaded from the helicopter and everything, and the doctor coming in from initial MRIs and stuff, which all that moving around is the worst. It's the absolute worst. You know, just nothing stabilized. So and I guess people in general, they're doing the best they can. You know, the doctors, the nurses, everybody's doing the best they can, but they don't really understand the pain levels there, which it's a good thing because they would probably be squeamish if they did. Um, and eventually a doctor just came in, was like, well, I'm going to do a surgery on you tomorrow with, you know, to because it's going to take a long time, and so we're just going to try to keep you as comfortable as we can tonight, but it's not looking good, you know. The
all right.
whether or not you'll walk out of here is just you're probably not going to walk out of here.
So
And
they gave
then
you that talk pretty much
yeah,
straight away.
yeah. And what's going through my mind like the whole time is like, shit, man, like this is going to change everything. You know, right from the very beginning. You know, it's like, you know, of course, then you're in enough pain too that it's like, well, if I don't make it through this, then that's okay. You know, because just my pain tolerance had worn out, had worn off. So I really was not concerned whether or not I was going to make it or not at that point.
Was that solely because of the pain, or was it kind of that in combination with that realization of this is really going to change a lot of things about my life?
Well, I hadn't even thought. I mean, at that point, I don't know that I'd really thought too much about it. I know that it hit me, but it was more the pain. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's like the pain. So if
man, that must have
and
been a fucking lot of pain. Oh
yeah,
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 I'm sorry, man. Yeah, that sucks.
it was the worst pain I'd ever felt. Now, when I was 27, when I stopped all the foolishness, I had gotten stabbed. Um,
All right.
and I thought that hurt. That was the worst pain I'd ever had until then. But I would say that like breaking your spine or you know neck or any of that, I didn't break my neck, but breaking your spine or what have you, that's got to be a 10. You know, because they're like pain level 1 to 10. Like so, the spine that's a 10, a stabbing is like a 7, and then everything else is definitely below that.
And that's what, like, my pain level when I broke my neck was zero.
Mm,
there was no pain in there at all.
really? Wow.
But from what I understand, it takes a lot more force to break a back than it does to break a neck.
Mm,
So you
gotcha.
did you only injure your back, or like you said, you fell on your shoulder? So was there any like collarbone stuff
No,
there
no,
as
nothing
well? Or
like that. No, just kind of bruised up a little bit, but nothing major. No neck injury. They scanned my head and everything, and they found a brain, so it's true that I have a brain.
I know, man. You can like hold that X-ray with pride a bit, hey.
That's right. That's right. See, it
uh,
is a brain.
so you had to wait overnight to get the surgery.
Mm,
Was
yeah,
that
yeah,
was a pretty rough night? I'm guessing.
yeah, yeah. That was rough. That was rough. See, the night before this happened, I had prayed a pretty fervent prayer, right? Like after getting the house cleaned up and trying to help the kid out and everything, I just wasn't feeling that love for the kid like I should feel for him. You know, I knew it was the right thing to do, so I was doing the right thing, but I really wasn't feeling that love for the kid, you know, like in fact, probably cleaning up his stuff had given me a bit of disgust about him to a degree. Um, so I prayed that God, why don't I have this love in my heart for a fellow man like I should? Number one. Number two, like I want to have that love in my heart for man.
So you felt a
Uh,
bit of guilt around not having it by the
right.
sound of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was feeling guilty about it. I really was.
Yeah.
And I prayed and prayed and was like, I really want to feel for people like how Jesus did, that real brotherly love, that real, agape love. And then the next day I fell off the roof. And that whole weekend, because it happened on a Friday, which is just really crazy. Because I swear I'm not comparing myself to Jesus here, by the way. But, Jesus was arrested and tormented from Friday night, or like from the night he was arrested, tormented, and then crucified, and then resurrected on the third day. So it's like that first night of the injury was torment the whole night. And then
Yeah.
I managed to have my surgery the following morning. And then when I woke up from that surgery, it's like things were a little better,
In
right?
terms
Like
of
things
pain, or
in terms of pain, like stabilized and all that. And it didn't hit me until I had gotten over to the inpatient rehab, like, damn, you prayed that prayer. And look at this. So it's like, damn, you just got crucified,
yeah.
practically. It's probably the closest I'll ever get. I don't plan on being crucified, but you never know what'll happen in the future. Um, right.
Yeah. Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Yeah, yeah. And, was like in that position where I had to ask people for help.
Yeah.
And then you feel bad for asking people for help. Especially if you were a strong man and like I always did everything for myself and like people would ask, "Do you need help?" No, I don't need any help. I've got this. Why would I need help? I'm a strong man.
Yeah, man. If you're
And
working construction, and I imagine you're when your buddies moving house and they're like, "Hey, we need someone to come and move a fridge."
right,
Was that
yeah,
you?
yeah. I tried to avoid. I'll be honest. Like I tried to avoid anybody moving anything. Just because like I'm getting old. I was getting old at the time. I was 38 when I got injured, so it's like if somebody would call for like, man, I don't know if it's worth a beer and a pizza anymore to move. How many steps do we have to bring that thing down?
Yeah.
Whew, man.
Free
Let
pass
me call
now.
my kids and see if my kids are into it, because my
Yeah.
kids are adults. But when I was in my 20s, it'd be like, I'll move this damn refrigerator myself. Get your
Yeah.
hands off. You're just messing me up here.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
when you're used to having that level of independence, and like you said, you you're strong, you're used to doing stuff for yourself, you're used to not having to ask for help from anyone. It's
Sure.
really hard to kind of cast that pride aside. Is that what you found? Like, did you battle a lot
Oh
with that?
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, it, you know, to be in a position where you have to ask for help is very humbling. I don't think I was a very humble dude to begin with. Um, I mean, humility is something that I think you have to learn. People are just not born with it. We're born just kind of selfish, right from the very beginning. We want what we want and we want it now.
Yeah.
Um, and if somebody gives it to you, you say thank you, but are you really thankful?
Yeah.
Um, so being in that position to have to ask for help in the hospital, it seemed okay because it's like, oh, I'm just doing my job, etc.
Yeah.
And then I get home and now it's just me. It's the woman I was married to at the time and my little son who was, how old was he at the time? He's going to turn 13 on Sunday, so that's 6 years, 6.5 years from then. So he was six, I guess, right around
Okay.
six. And, he didn't know, and he was so used to just jumping on dad and playing with dad. And that made me real sad that he wasn't able to do that. Because, like, he would just walk by and bump me, like, bump my foot, and it would hurt. Like, it would hurt like somebody had just beat me up,
Oh,
or
really?
just, like, struck me. Yeah.
Were
Yeah,
you
it was terrible.
were you out of the hospital pretty quickly? Like, did you do a intensive inpatient rehab, or was it kind of just surgery and then straight home?
Well, okay, so surgery and then about a week and a couple days in intensive care, maybe a week in intensive care. I'm not really sure exactly how many days. And then they moved over to this Carillion Community Hospital, which is their rehab center. And I was there for 21 days, I think,
Oh, that's
something
not
like
long.
that. Yeah, yeah. And they had talked about sending me somewhere else, like maybe I think that it's the Shepherd Center that's here and like around Atlanta or somewhere, which is about 5 hours from Roanoke, 5 or 6 hours. And I was just like, no, I want to go home.
Yeah.
So because
Okay.
home at the time was all the way in Nashville, Tennessee, which is a solid 8 hours from Roanoke.
Yeah.
Um, so when I was getting discharged, I was, terrified, just terrified as to what's going to happen. Like now I have to go home, face reality. Here's the bills, got to pay the rent, got to pay the car payment, got to pay all the stuff. Which we had two cars at the time. One was paid for, so we sold the one that was paid for. Um, Managed to get through. Here you have to wait 6 months before you get any kind of like social safety net or get the disability safety net.
Oh, really?
And so yeah, so with 6 months, I'd always listen to that. Have at least 6 months in the hole. Well, it took every penny of that in that 6 months, and
So
then
good thing you had it there, though.
yeah, yeah, right, right. I mean, I had worked hard and I hadn't played as hard as I did in my 20s. I played a little, like
Yeah.
I was just drinking. I like drinking like a little bourbon and having a cigar.
Yeah.
That was a good time. Because I thought that that's what men did. Men just drink bourbon and have a cigar. I had gotten on this kick to, I wanted to quit alcohol and everything. And I'll tell you, like, I'm going to back up to just before my injury. My dad had practically drank himself to death.
All
This
right.
is in 2016, 2017. I realized that my dad was really going downhill. And he had developed Lewy body dementia, liver cirrhosis, all that stuff. And I went and visited him. Then he died, and I always looked up to my dad. He was a functional alcoholic, right?
You guys were pretty
Um,
close.
yeah, well, I didn't grow up with my mother, so he's
Yeah.
pretty
Okay.
much what I had. And, it wasn't the best upbringing. It could have been better. Could have been better. Um, I don't necessarily want to get it all the way into my childhood at the moment, but I'll just talk about, my dad being the functional alcoholic. So I thought that's just kind of what a man did. If you're a man, you drink and you're jovial and you don't take no shit. Right. So, um, I had pretty much quit. Well, had I quit drinking? No. I thought I was going to quit drinking when I got out of the hospital, but I didn't. And they only give you the pain medicine for so long, and then I was like, well, I need the alcohol for my pain, you know.
We're really good at
Uh,
justifying stuff, aren't we?
right, yeah, yeah. Like I can make an excuse for everything, which anybody can. That's just what we do. I need this. I wouldn't be doing this except for I need it, right?
Yeah.
And with that, I was really masking everything, and it's like, well, my dad drank himself to death. So that must be what I'm going to do now. And really fell down that deep hole of depression. The Levi's mother, which that's the youngest that I was talking about. His mother would try to like hug me or something like that, and I'd be like, "Don't touch me. I don't want to be touched," and just any of that stuff. So I was really pushing people away, and
Yeah.
frankly, I just wanted to like lay down and give up. You know.
Is that why you were pushing everyone away? Because you just wanted to be left alone to give up?
Um, I'm not really. Not really certain that I was aware of why I was pushing anybody away. Um, but in fact, I was not very self aware at all.
Yeah.
It took her basically being fed up, and she's like, "Fine, if you don't want to be around, if you don't want me around, I won't be around anymore." And um, then our lease was expired on the apartment. It was in December. She had gotten an apartment. I had nowhere to go. I was like, "You're abandoning me," like just the crazy stuff, right?
Yeah, like
And
get the hell away from me. Now you're abandoning me.
right.
Yeah.
What in the world? And my son, my oldest son, had gotten married in that previous year and bought a house. So luckily, I was like, Dylan, I'm going through this. Can I come stay with you for a little bit? But I won't stay long. And he let me. He made things comfortable for me at his house. And as soon as I was able to, I bought the little house that I'm in now. And so I'm here with my oldest three children that live here,
Yeah. Okay.
not in my house. They all have their own homes, but
Yeah.
and Dylan just had his first child, so grandfather there. But
Ah.
my middle son had two children with this old gal that he thought he was going to rescue. Anyway, that's a whole other story. So I have, my three children and three grandchildren here. Levi is back and forth between Tennessee and Virginia because of the situation. But so it really broke his life, Levi. I didn't really, you don't realize how much divorce affects children. I was a child of divorce, but my parents divorced when I was 18 months old. So I didn't really
Yeah.
see that. And then my dad was married to my stepmother for 30 years before he died.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, yeah, and that's a whole other story too. There's a lot of stories, but to stick with the spinal cord injury one, when I got in this house and Levi he'd be here for 6 weeks and gone for 6 weeks, so I found myself very solitary, alone. Which I was able to get in and out of the house. I can leave. I can do things. Um, I got to back up just 1 second. So it was January 1st, 2021 when I went to stay with my son. And then on January 3rd, I dragged everybody to the gym and was like, we're going to start the gym.
Uh,
Which,
when you say
yeah,
everybody, do you mean all the kids? Or
yeah, my Dylan and Austin, so that's the oldest two boys I have.
yeah.
That's everybody. as far as the men folk, right?
So had you been into the gym at all before that, or this was just like a bit of a eureka moment? Like, I'm going to go to the gym, and you lot are all coming with me.
So I had started I had started like doing push-ups and stuff there at the house before the lease expired in Tennessee. And I went and purchased a membership at a Planet Fitness and never went. So then I was like, I don't have anything else to do. And I was starting to feel a little bit better. I noticed that just doing a little bit of working out was helping with some of the injury pain.
Yeah,
And so on January 3rd, drug everybody in there. I think I had 25-pound plates on either side, something like that.
yeah,
And was doing the best I can. So I was rocking about 75 pounds. Uh, which for me was great with the injury and stuff. Now I'm hitting more like 300, which is pretty crazy.
yeah. That's big man with no leg drive either.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I got into the gym, and then I got into, well, like I learned that you have, what you put into your body matters. It's not just what you put in, because you hear a lot of people that have got some kind of vice. They're like, it's not what you put into the body, it's what you let out of the body. Like, well, it's what you put in too. So I started listening to a lot of motivational stuff, a lot of preaching stuff. Jordan Peterson, he's great. He's like, you have to be responsible for your life. I'm like, yes, you absolutely do. Because
yeah.
as I was piddling around the house, and I'm like, well, there's nobody here to clean up shit except me. I got to clean stuff up. I've got to do this. I've got to do that.
Had you kind
And
of stopped pushing people away at that point? Like, did you realize? Had you kind of figured out that it was a bit counterproductive, or were you still kind of
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
you'd
I
st-
had, I
yeah,
had. Um, you know, I was really trying to be the best dad that I could be. So at one point, in this healing process, I had to think, like I'm here by myself. Like, who the hell am I? Right. So I just started writing down things, like who am I? Okay, well, I'm a dad. Um, I like writing. I like this. I like that. And I had a list of like 50 different things that I like to do. I'm like, so what on here is like important? Like, what is important to me, the most important that I really want to do? And I narrowed it down to like four key elements. And number one is to be the pater familias, right? The grandfather, the father, because as my dad is dead, my grandparents are dead. I am the I mean, my brother is older than me, but he doesn't have any kids. So as far as the family goes, like my children and everything, like I am definitely the head of the family when it comes to that.
yeah,
And so it's very important for me to be that. Then the second thing was to be become become a good partner, because I believe that man should have a woman, right? Or partner, whatever you're into. I don't know. I know that, like, I'm going to speak from a biblical perspective here. Right there in Genesis chapter 2, verse number 18, it says, and God saw that man was alone, and this was not good. Therefore he created unto him an help meet. And that would be a helper that would meet all the needs that the man is just not programmed to do, right? A man's programmed a certain way from genetics, and a female is programmed a certain way from genetics. It's society that corrupts that, I think. So, how is one supposed to be a man that is going to be loved and a good partner? So, I had to think about that. And I had, because you could beat somebody down with a Bible verse too, because you
yeah,
look a little further in the Bible, it says, husbands, love your wives, and wives, submit to your husbands. Right? So I could definitely beat somebody down and say, well, right here in the Bible it says you need to submit to me. Well, there is a very interesting dynamic that happens when a man is on his purpose from God. Um, it's almost an unshakable purpose. It's a
Yeah.
mission. And a woman who's going to be a good partner will see that mission and want to be a part of it. Hence,
Yeah.
submission. So her mission is to help the mission, right? In
Same as the
that, I
man
mean,
in that sense.
right,
I mean,
right,
if you're both serving the mission, it's kind of
right.
on a more even field, isn't it?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So a man has to be worthy of respect, right? Not demand respect, command respect, not argue for respect. It's like I've heard you say, like, people who are good tell you they're good, but people who are great, you just know it, right?
Yeah.
Or is that how you say it? How do you say it?
Oh,
I want to get
when
it
you're
right.
when you're good, you tell everybody. When you're great, they tell you.
Right. There you go. There you go. I try to keep that in mind. That way I don't mess that up again. I like that. I like that because that makes perfect sense. And that's just what a man should be. A man should be on a mission that is doing something that's going to help the world, not hurt the world. And then his partner will be in the mission with him, helping him like a perfect helper. Now, there's going to be that I say perfect help, and you would think, oh, there's never going to be any problems, right? There's always personalities, and
Oh
there's
yeah.
always ideas. The thing is to be very. I've had to learn that listening is a very big part of loving people. So
Yeah.
when you have a partner, you definitely want to consider their ideas and listen, and even repeat back to them what they said. Even if the first thing it strikes you is like, if it strikes you as, man, that's off the wall and crazy, don't say that. Say, so this is your idea right here, XYZ. Okay. And why do you think that's a great idea? Let them explain themselves because maybe they have an angle on it that you don't have, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, and all that comes from, so that's the number two, is be a good partner. Number three, I wanted to be a good mentor, right? Mentoring first my children, my own family. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm your father, but I'm your mentor too.
Yeah.
Um, my middle son was 19 at the time, and had just gotten broken up with this girl, just had a baby. Well, wait, no, hadn't had the second baby, only had the one baby. They were split up. He was chasing drugs. He was out on bond. The only thing that was saving him was, um, I had to go before the judge and say, look, yes, I will make sure that this kid does not do anything else stupid right now until he comes back to court and manages his business. I don't
That's a
know what
big
he's in
promise to
trouble
make for a
for.
teenager.
Right, right. Like, I can't remember what the hell he did. I think it was, I don't know. It had something to do with like some drug fueled rampage, to be honest. Like, he had gotten
Yeah.
on methamphetamine.
Oh, okay.
He was down to, yeah, he's like 6'3". He was down to 130 some pounds. He was just in a hell of a shape.
Oh wow.
And I knew that, like, there's just like, I can't be like who I used to be and help this kid. There's just no way. Um, which I was really, I had no urge to really drink or anything. I had kind of subsided from that, just kind of like magically, I guess. I don't even know. Just like one day I said I'm not going to do this anymore, and then I stopped.
Was that to do with your kids, or was that
At
more?
first, it was to do with me. I was like, because liquor's expensive, man.
Yeah.
So I got to buy a house. I don't have time to be drinking and shit like that. I've got to buy a house. I've got to get my ducks in a row. And anyhow, knowing what he was going through, I was setting off on this path. I had just recently gotten on social media and seen that there were wheelchair bodybuilders, and I was like, okay. And that first time in the gym, like, that was like that night I slept good
Yeah.
and was like, all right, so maybe this is what I needed in my life. This takes the place of that hard work that I used to do, to pick up heavy shit, put down heavy shit, right?
It seems instinctual, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. Make brain pain go away, pick up heavy object, put down heavy object.
Yeah.
and and I tried to get the kid into the tried to get him into the gym with me right there in the beginning, and he wouldn't go. He was still holding on. He's an addict, right? And
Was he reaching
after I got
reach
go ahead, what was that?
was he reaching for help, or did you kind of have to chase him down and
Yeah, I had to
and help
chase
him
him
out?
down at the time. Like his mama had called me and was like, "The judge isn't going to let me gonna let him out with me as his bond because she'd already been his bond. He got in trouble again, right? So the judge wasn't going to let him out. He's not going to let his grandparents do it. All the people who had, in my opinion, enabled his behavior. No, they weren't going to let him go with them. So I had to go and pretty much propose marriage to the judge. Don't you worry. Yes, ma'am. I'll do everything possible to make sure that this boy stays straight. Like if it takes the fear of God, I will put it in him.
Yeah.
And so they let him go with me, and he was like so mad. He was so mad, and I
What was
probably
he
shouldn't have done it.
what was he
But
mad about?
he was just mad that he couldn't. He's like, so you just gonna let me go? I'm like, nope. I'm gonna watch you like this, like a hawk, and make sure that you don't do anything stupid. He's like, you don't have to do that. You can trust me. It's like, yeah, yeah, sure I can. So we're at Dylan's house, and he's sitting across the room from me, and I'm trying to explain to him, just like some kind of little rule of life, like how to act toward people or something, because I knew how to act toward people, and my dad had taught me, so I'm trying to teach this kid, and he's just on his phone swiping, and he starts laughing at me. And he says, "What are you going to do?" So I transfer off the sofa into the wheelchair, and I just roll over and I just like bop the phone out of his hand. And he looks at me. "Why'd you do that?" It's like, "You asked me what I was going to do." Said, "Now give me your phone." He's like, "I'm a grown man." I was like, "You ain't grown. I'm in charge of you right now." You know, which I wasn't trying to just play that hand like boom, but I'm like, "Look, kid, you've got to figure something out." I was really just trying to make a breakthrough. And it did. It broke his heart that I had knocked his phone out of his hand. It really did. So he was able to get some stuff off his chest without yelling. I mean, he kind of had a little crying session. Um, and I just listened, because I think he was like, "I'll just leave." I was like, "Fine, you just leave. I'm just going to have to call the damn police to come pick you up because they ain't going to pick me up for not doing my job." Right. And it was at that point that he kind of had a come to Jesus moment and broke down. It's like, "You would do that to me? I would do that for you, son, not to you. I would do that for you."
Yeah.
And so from there, he started going to the gym with me. He actually started going on his own because he
All
didn't
right.
really. He was going on his own. He was getting advice from some of the old meatheads in the gym, which is fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Um, and then he noticed how I was training a little differently than he was, and he started getting curious. And for a long time, we worked out together. Now he kind of does his own thing, but he got straightened out. Like we spent a lot of time together. Not like every day or anything, but we'd at least once a week we'd get together and check in and stuff. He gradually got better. Now he's 6'3". He's still 6'3". He hadn't grown any, but he's 215 instead
Oh
of
wow.
132. He started MMA, so he's hoping to get a good fight in here soon, like some amateur fights.
That's awesome, man.
He he doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs. He takes care of his children. Um, yeah, I couldn't be more proud of him, to be honest. Like he is so far, so much further in life than I was at 23. Because at 23, I was a father, but I was a shit father at 23. I was like working out of town and partying with women, and you know, I'd
You know,
work all day, play all night kind of guy. You know.
you know what that means, though, man. That you learned from the things
Yeah.
you messed up. You know,
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
being able to take those, and it's very easy to say, do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
And I know that's the way that a lot of people kind of parent, but it's a lot harder to say, do as I do, because you've got to hold yourself to that standard,
Right.
And
Right.
I don't know, it sounds to me like the kind of combination of you holding yourself to that standard and just being there for him, man. Like you said, just listening to him.
Mhm.
Like, that may have been one of the first times in his life that someone had actually really wanted to hear what he had to say.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It is actually. I mean, you'd have to know his mother's family. I'm not going to really be down on them, because
Yeah.
if it wasn't for them, then my kids probably never would have gotten any church or anything. So they did
Yeah.
the best they could with what they know, you know. And
Yeah.
and I've looked back on my own life, at my parents, my upbringing, and I realized how young and fallible they were.
It's
You
a
know
different, say,
yeah, yeah,
different paradigm when you look at your parents as humans instead of parents, isn't it?
right, right. Especially now that they say middle age, but there's no way this is the middle unless I'm living to be 90. Um, uh, and I'm so much older than my dad was when he was hard on me when I was a kid. And then I think about, like, because when I was in my 20s, I wouldn't really talk to my dad too much, because I was mad at him. I was mad at him for lots of different reasons. But ultimately, he was doing the best that he could with the tools he had.
Yeah.
He was. It's this cyclical thing from parent to child, parent to child, parent to child, and eventually the cycle has to be broken. So that's where I'm at now, is trying to make sure that cycle's broken.
It sounds like
Um,
you've done a pretty awesome job of
well, thank you, I appreciate that.
it.
But mentor. So after I helped my son, I thought that there's a whole lot of young men who need help in their lives, need somebody who has already been down some stupid road, and it's like, dude, you do not want to go down that stupid road. Trust me, you know. Um, and I think that there's so many people who've grown up with single parents, and they just need something. They need something from somebody. Um, and physical fitness just wasn't enough, right? It just wasn't enough. So that's why I developed Rolling to Win to where it is today, was really to help that whole, using biblical truths and applying them to modern life.
Yeah.
Which I love Stoic principles. I love Carl Jung, the individuation, like the self, learning about the self. I love all that stuff. And if it wasn't for Carl Jung, then I probably never would have gotten my faith back, which
Oh,
is
really?
wild to say. It's wild to say. Yeah, Jung was asked in this interview in 1955, you know, now, what are your beliefs on God? And he said, well, as a child, we went to church, and I believed very much. He said, well, what about now? He said, well, that's a tough question. Uh, it's not, it's, I don't have to believe. I know. I just know. And
Yeah.
I'm like, how in the world do you know? How do you know that God is there? So I did a whole lot, man. I read through his volumes and volumes, took notes here, case studies here, etc. And at the end of the day, he was talking about the unconscious, the part of us that we're not in charge of. My ego is not in charge of my unconscious. my unconscious is really probably more in charge of my ego than I would like it to be, right? Because the ego wants to be in control.
Mm.
I mean, I'm at peace with my unconscious, but it is that deep well in which the Holy Spirit lives 100%. Because from out of nowhere, you'll get this idea that might be helpful to somebody. Like, aha, now I have to share that helpful thing, or I have to do this thing, or you get a calling on your life that this is something that you have to do. Well, where does that calling come from? But God, you know, people can say it comes from the unconscious, and you can look at it very analytically, very scientifically, but I think the science is the proof that that is in fact God. So if it wasn't for Jung, then I would not think that the Holy Spirit was a real deal living inside of.
Do you find as well that the belief faith is it's like a trust fall, right?
Mm,
It and when you take it and you fall and you get caught, then that's kind of what forces it. It reinforced it for me.
right,
At least it's like
right.
when you lean into it and you're like, oh, he's there. You
Hmm.
know, that's how I kind of feel about it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can even look at the Stoics. The Stoics believe that the universe was very structured. They call it logos,
Mm.
by this divine structure, right? No explanation, it just is. Science is all about studying that structure, but they cannot, for the life of them, figure out how it happened.
Yeah.
They just can't.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And I have these conversations with Shannon, who's my soon to be, and she's like, but she's very very scientific. She has the bachelor's in psychology, bachelor's in nursing, all that stuff. So science is science is science with. And she's like, but science can explain everything. And I go, well, explain this. And then sometimes she's like, which it was more in the beginning than it is now. She has actually come to develop the same sort of sense that I have, I believe, which is very, which is good because as a man, that's what you want to do. You don't want to lead somebody to hell. You want to lead them to heaven, right?
yeah, definitely. And I think what you've told me of your principles so far is it's a lot easier to have values or a meaning higher than yourself and have people on the path with you,
Mm-hmm.
rather than having no meaning or ideals above yourself and just basically saying, do as I
Right.
say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like you're all on the path together rather than they're on your path of what you think's best.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. We're
Um,
on. We're all on the same path, trying to find, looking around, seeing what's here.
yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. And then the last pillar, because you got to have four pillars. Well, technically, you only have to have three, but four is completion, and that's where the bodybuilding comes in. That physical aspect to have a healthy body. In order to have a healthy mind, you have to have a healthy body.
Yeah.
You have a sick body, your mind will be sick too. You just can't help it. That's just the way it is. It all works together. We're not necessarily just a pilot of a walking corpse, but we are the corpse.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We are the corpse and the pilot.
Right.
Yeah. So with your bodybuilding, I know you've got into like the Arnold amateur,
Hmm.
and we've spoken before about how you kind of build a community around yourself or got involved in that community. How
Hmm.
did that happen? Was that very proactive on your behalf, or did you kind of have people
Right.
around you saying, "Hey, come check this out"? Like, was it?
No, 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 nothing like that. I mean, um, I don't even know. Just kind of got suggested in the feed, right? Like, suggested like friends and Facebook and stuff. And I'm like, these dudes are crazy in the wheelchair. Look at them. And I reached out to him and was like, "Hey, man, like, how do you get into bodybuilding?" And had started the conversation. One of them that I had a conversation with right off was Harold Kelly.
Yeah,
He's 5-time Olympian.
he's
Uh,
an
I,
incredible guy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's even cooler in person.
All right.
Yeah, I've hung out with him a couple of times at a couple different shows. He's a great guy. He really is. Good Christian man, like very faithful. Um, Another one, Bradley Betts. Talked to Bradley Betts about getting into it,
Yeah.
and he's a younger fella that, um, when it comes to bodybuilding, he knows what's up. He seems mad sometimes to me, but that's okay. I mean, maybe he is mad. He's all right. He can be mad if he wants to be mad.
Yeah.
Um, but I've been, I've met him in person in Dallas, and he was cool. His coach is cool. Who else was like a big influence on that? Let's see. I think I talked to Chris 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 Dim. Is that right? Who was actually on the stage with Ronnie Coleman when he was walking around, but I think he got in a surgery messed him up. I think a surgery messed him up, and he ended up
All
in a
right.
wheelchair from a surgery. Yeah, and Chris Dim, yeah, that's his name. And then, of course, Nick Scott, who is the wheelchair bodybuilding chairman.
He's
So
an awesome advocate, eh?
yeah, he
He
is.
for the for what you want in a spokesman, he's got all of it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
awesome guy.
And I would say anybody that wants to get into wheelchair bodybuilding now, hell, reach out to me. Like it's just as I know what's up too.
Yeah.
I've competed in two different shows now, and I've got technically three national titles and four and one international title because the Arnold's an international competition.
All right.
So then, yeah, so there's that. And then men's physique 2023, middleweight bodybuilding 2023, and then masters because I'm old in 2023. And then my next competition is going to be the 2025. So,
All right. Masters
yeah.
or open
Well,
or
I'll probably compete in the Masters, but I want to win the whole show. I want to get
yeah.
that pro card, just so I can say, hey, I'm a pro. And then I made it a mission, like that first day in the gym when I first got here, made it a mission to one day be on the Olympia stage. Made it sort of my 5 year plan. So we're
Yeah.
heading that way. We're heading that way. It
Wow.
hadn't been quite 5 years yet, so we'll see.
So you had that idea from day one. You're like,
Yeah.
I want to roll on stage with all these guys.
Right, right. I had even set up to go a couple of times before I actually went. And, I wasn't scared to go to the gym, but I was scared to go on a trip. Scared to
Oh,
go on a
like
trip.
on a plane? Is it like a flight there, or do you have to drive?
Well, I mean, a plane or a car ride, I was just scared to go on like a really long trip, just in general. Like, what if I can't get in the bathroom? Or what if this doesn't work? What if that doesn't work? What if this happens? What if that happens?
It's
And,
daunting.
yeah, yeah. I guess I had never really gotten any kind of counseling for the trauma, of being in, falling and ending up in a wheelchair. And I was really just terrified that something would go wrong wherever
Yeah.
I went. And um, I don't know what spurred me to do it. Okay, this is what spurred me to do it. I got COVID. I got
Yeah.
COVID, man, and it was rough. Like, and then after the COVID, I'm like, what am I doing? Just like sticking to myself. Like I've had 2 years now that I was going to go compete and I didn't. So just what am I doing? And then it occurred to me like, well, why don't you just try like the hardest thing possible, which is go primitive camping.
Yeah.
So I bought a tent, made sure that I could put it together. And I asked Austin, who was the son who was on at the time, he was really just kind of he wasn't quite there, but he was about there.
Yeah.
He wasn't really doing the drugs anymore. He might have been doing just a little bit of drinking,
Yeah.
but not as much as he had been. And asked him if he wanted to go on the trip, and we went for the fall equinox down to I guess Burnsville, North Carolina, which is one of the places heavily hit by this hurricane that happened. Um,
Yeah. It's horrible there right now.
Right, right. I can only imagine because this was the campsite was on the Toe River. It's called TOE, like toe on your foot river.
Yeah.
And we got a campsite right on the water, which was cool, man. So cool. I posted a Facebook post that like it was this trip right here that finally got me to the point where I'm like, okay, if I can do this, then by God, I can do an airplane or I can do, other little trips.
Yeah.
And we went on that, and I got the worst UTI I'd ever gotten in my life
Oh, really?
from trying to cathing in the tent, right? Because there's other campers, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to cut a light on in the tent because, like it's like a puppet show at that point if you got a light on. So, I'm trying to cast in the dark, and I must have gotten something dirty, Oh my God.
uh,
And I got this horrible, horrible infection. And, whew, man, one of them swelled up like this big, like no shit, size of a grapefruit. It hurt
oh,
so bad.
wow.
Yeah, it was terrible. And I ended up in the hospital from that. I'm like, well, that didn't kill me. So I guess we're good. Let's do some
Yeah.
stuff, like what
Yeah.
am I even doing?
Went out into the wild, come back with a swollen
Yeah.
testicle and didn't die, man. That kind of tells you that you can go do some
Right.
shit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Hell, I'd even told the doctor, I was like, just cut it off if you have to, man. I don't care at this point. Like, better be without it. He's like, we're
Uh,
not going to do that. We can just fix it with antibiotics or whatever. It's like, okay, if you say so.
uh,
Yeah,
uh,
that was a miserable
oh man,
time.
yeah.
I'd say that's probably a pain level 10 too. That's probably a pain level 10 too.
I'm sure any blokes listening right now can probably agree with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, I
uh,
mean, I took those four pillars, and that's kind of what I applied to my program. So, with the program, I do want I want to help young men become good leaders of their home. I want to help young men start out in life and also and then be a good leader. But you got to have a starting point somewhere.
yeah,
And somebody my age, if they're willing to listen, just it's never too late to start down the path of becoming the person that you were meant to be honest. So
it yeah, it's never too late, man. But do you find that the older you are, kind of the more set in your ways you become? Like,
hmm
there's more to undo to become
mm,
the person
hmm
you're meant to be because you've spent so long being the person that you are. You know what I mean? Is that something
for sure.
that you've found with people that you've worked with?
Yeah, yeah. People have this. Most people have a hard time handing over authority.
Yeah,
But if your life's a wreck and you've been in charge of it and you want to change, then probably the first thing you should do is let somebody else take the helm for just a minute to get you steered back on course.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think that that's a very important thing, and that is a very Christian principle in and of itself. Is in fact surrendering, right? So you have to surrender it. Like so maybe you want to go. I mean, I'm going to just and say drinking, right? So maybe you want to go get drunk, but then there's that part of you that's saying, you're unconscious that has come to the surface. You really shouldn't do that. Well, if you surrender to that, then chances are you're going to have a good outcome. Now, if you don't surrender to that, you go to the bar, you have a few drinks, you piss somebody off, you get punched in the mouth. Who knows what could happen? Just in general, maybe just who knows? Any kind of bad thing could happen from that instance. I mean, what started as a fun night with the boys turns into a nightmare very quickly if you're not careful.
Yeah,
So if you're not able to surrender to even yourself saying, "Hey, you shouldn't do that," then the first thing that you should try is surrendering to some kind of higher power, higher help.
it's it's interesting to me that the way that you see it is almost the inverse of the way a lot of people see it. Like, a lot of
Mm,
people would talk about surrendering to their urges. You know what
hmm
I mean? And you're
Oh yeah.
saying surrender to your better judgment, basically.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's kind of the inverse. And do you feel that that's like a deliberate choice? Like you shifted from operating like more from the ego to the unconscious deliberately?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a deliberate choice for sure. I mean, I read that somebody had asked Socrates, "How do you live such a good life?" He said, "You know, the voice inside your head that says, 'Don't do this' or 'Do this.' I listen to that."
Yeah.
Like, what? What? That's all it takes, you know? I mean, and sure enough, it kind of just clicked with me. Um, I think honestly, what held me back from personal development the most was being so hardcore on Bible belief.
Like you
Okay,
got caught
and I'm
up
going to
in the.
qualify that.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
qualify that. So I go to, this was an independent, fundamental Baptist Bible college that I went to, right? And what that means is that if it ain't in the Bible, we don't believe it. It doesn't work. The world's 6,000 years old because that's where the Bible starts, and that's
Yeah.
it, bub. And I grew up with that from really an early age. My grandmother was Southern Baptist. It's kind of the Baptist belief here in the South of the United States is, if it ain't in the Bible, it ain't true, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
um, we got almost hoodooed into believing that psychology or any of these things that help people are real. Because really, all you need to do is pray to Jesus, and Jesus will fix it. You see, with this just magic swooping hand is going to come down and fix it. So it wasn't until I had sort of been like, well, praying is not fixing anything. But now what?
Yeah.
And in some of my motivational listening and stuff, it came across Jordan Peterson, and I liked what he had to talk about. So I read the book 12 Rules for Life,
Yeah.
and it's a good starting point. It's a very good starting point because it teaches you to take personal responsibility and stuff. It's not that Jesus is going to fix it, but maybe you can pray to Jesus, meditate, and the then be led by the Spirit, be led by Jesus, submit to that inner unconscious that is telling you, hey, do this thing. Don't do that thing. That thing will hurt you. But,
Yeah.
but that thing that'll hurt you, that's pleasurable. That's nice. I like that. I like, well, eventually you have to figure out how to surrender to Jesus. Like Jesus, I mean, and that's how you actually surrender to Jesus, not just pray to Jesus to help. Oh, please help. Oh, please do this. Oh, please do that. Jesus is not a genie.
No, it does not give out lottery numbers.
Right, right.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So there's work involved. Like Jesus and God work through people, and so you have to be, you have to be an open channel for that to work, and that requires submission. I think that requires submission because the me, like the me that I used to know, you know, he liked drinking. He likes, doing a little drugs here, a little there. He liked womanizing. He liked, you know, all the things that they say don't do this, right? He liked that stuff because all that stuff it maybe helped fill some void that he had.
Yeah.
That kid, that young man. Um, and I think about there, and this comes to mind as you've watched Shawshank Redemption when Red is sitting there in front of the parole board and he says, I really, am I sorry for the things I've done? Am I sorry for what I did? Yes, I am sorry for what I did. Can I change it? No, because that boy is long gone.
Yeah.
Or I would talk to that young man. I would talk to that young man and I try to talk some sense into him, but he's long gone and all that's left is this old man.
Yeah.
And that's where we are in life in general, is we make mistakes and we can't be so hard on ourselves that we don't forgive ourselves. We can always regret what we did, and think that it was bad because it was terrible. You know, some of the stuff that I've done in my life was absolutely terrible. You know, the stuff that maybe I'll never get caught for, but I have paid the price.
Yeah. Do
You
you
know,
do you feel that understanding the reasons that you've done those things helps you forgive yourself for it?
yeah,
Because
yeah, I think
forgiveness,
so.
yeah,
I think
for,
so.
forgiveness is a really hard one, isn't it? It's like the way that I learned to forgive other people is by understanding why they did the things that they did. Because when you understand that everything people do is just a reflection of their own lived experience and very rarely a statement on your worth, then
Hmm.
it's a lot easier to forgive them. And
Right,
find that when you can apply the same to yourself, like, oh, maybe I did this because of this, like, I'm not making excuses for why I did that, but it's easier to forgive myself when I understand why, if
right,
you know what I mean.
right.
Do you find that?
Um, yeah, yeah. I do think that that is 100% accurate. One of the ways I started dealing with some of the things is like Jung, using Jung and shadow work, right? Like the things that might make me mad about somebody else. I'm like,
Mm,
okay, I'm getting mad at them for that, but why? Like it's that whole like, you know, when you point, you have several fingers pointing back at you. So why am I getting mad for at this person for XYZ? What about XYZ in my own life am I not taking control of?
yeah,
Um, Now, you know, people make really stupid decisions, and usually it just comes from a selfish place. Just a selfish place. They were just trying to have a need met that they didn't feel they could meet it unless they lied to me, or a need met that they couldn't fill unless they took something from me.
yeah,
You know, and which is unfortunate. I mean, I did develop a saying a long time ago that if they could live with it, I could live without it. But it's not necessarily so much because people need that same sort of forgiveness.
yeah,
That way, maybe they can come to the conclusion that they need to submit to the goodness that's in them as well.
yeah. I think it's in everyone. Well, almost everyone. There's probably a few psychopaths and that sort of thing that it isn't, but
Maybe, maybe.
it's
I still think a psychopath knows that they're doing wrong.
oh
Like you
yeah,
think about like somebody like a Dahmer or something like that. They knew that they were doing some messed up stuff, man.
oh yeah,
They just they could not listen to that inner piece that was like, don't do that. They just couldn't do it. That impulse was too strong. That
yeah,
impulse was just far too strong.
yeah.
Lucy got this one. She can you see this one?
Uh,
Yeah,
hey Lucy.
yeah.
She's cute.
She's like, yeah. All right, go on now. I'll take you out in a minute. She's
uh,
ready to go out. It's about time for her to go out.
oh, is it? Uh,
Yeah, on
um,
the dog schedule.
oh, me too, man. Mine's demanding.
Right,
Is
right. A
is
dog
funny.
will have its way.
Oh yeah, it's good though. You know, like on the days that I don't necessarily feel like getting out and doing anything, I've got him there. You know, biting at my hand, like, "Come on, we're going."
Yeah,
Like, oh yeah,
yeah.
okay. And then you sort of start feeling good once you get out and about. You know.
Right,
Um,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, I kind of lost where we were at. Um, so you're doing
That's them
a lot
dogs,
of
man.
a lot of shadow work type stuff and kind of looking internally, like whenever you were starting to get angry.
Right, right.
And
And that really helped me to come to grips with who I am. You know, like really develop a better sense of self.
yeah,
And I noticed, like, I used to be one of those anger prone people. I'd yell at you, Um, but now, like, I can feel myself getting mad, and I can make my needs met very quickly. I like, especially if something's happening, I can say, "Look, I need a minute so I can think about something." You know, especially if I'm in one of those moments that could end up being heated. But I'm very good at going, "Okay, look, I have to take a minute, and I have to see why I'm getting mad because I'm getting
yeah,
mad." You know,
yeah,
and make that express and express that to somebody so that they know, like. he's getting mad, and then after I've had a minute, I can explain. Look, it's not necessary. I think what you were saying was actually just striking a nerve in me because maybe that's a part of me that I don't like.
Yeah.
You know, and so I just have to understand that critiques are important from other people as well. You know, now there again, it, you have to have that outlook that like not all critique is good critique, and some people are allowed to critique and some people aren't. You know, like I
Yeah.
wouldn't let somebody who's completely impulse driven critique me. However, they could critique me all they want, but I won't even get mad about that. I'm just like that poor person doesn't even understand.
One of my sort of sayings is don't take money advice from poor people. Like, and it
Mm,
kind of applies
yeah,
across all things. It's like
yeah, it does.
if they don't have what I want for myself, like if there's not some aspect of them that's something that I aspire to, then they're
Mhm.
probably not someone I should listen to on that if they're
Right.
critiquing that area of me, you know. Um, but it can be hard to discern sometimes as well, can't it? It's like maybe someone is critical, and
Mhm.
that's where having a strong sense of self really comes in, because you can look at that criticism and just be like, well, that's not true. Like, I know that not to be true about
Right.
myself.
Yeah.
But also having that ability to set your ego aside if you do find yourself getting a bit angry or whatever, and
Mhm.
saying, you know what, there might actually be a little bit of truth here to what you're saying, and
Right.
having that humility to like set your ego aside and say, yeah, that's something that I don't like about myself. That's something that I need to work on. You know,
Right. Right.
um, did you find that was a hard transition to make, to be able to like it? It sounds like you're very good at identifying what's actually going on
Hmm.
within yourself. So that's obviously the first step. Did that take you a while to figure out?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I spent 38 years driven by impulse, pretty much. Like, and always just trying, like, ooh, I got to fight the impulse, whatever the impulse was. Like, if it was something, I mean, anything that would be detrimental, you have to fight those impulses. And just fighting ain't enough, I guess. Just fighting ain't enough. You have to have some sense of understanding why that impulse exists in the first place. But I was completely unaware
Yeah,
initially, and until I found my place in solitude, and I had to learn how to deal with that. Like Seneca said, solitude is a gift. So I had to figure out how to apply that. Like, if it's a gift, why does it feel not like a gift?
yeah. How do I make it
it
feel like a gift?
Right, right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah. So how do I come to grips with solitude? And then I guess that it is a gift, and that you can actually take the time to reflect and figure out who you are. And
yeah,
if you're constantly dating or in a relationship, or trying to get the next leg or whatever, then you're never going to figure out who you are, because who you are, you don't even know who you are. You're this persona that does this thing on these impulses, and
yeah,
you think that's who you are. Like Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, you will be led by it, and you will call it fate.
yeah. And that, so when you spend a lot of time by yourself in solitude, is that when you come to understand your values? Like, how do you determine where, like, who you are? I guess where's the line in the sand on John?
Mm, right,
Do you
right.
determine it by your values? By, is it still a little bit by the things that you do? Like, how do you define that?
It's the things you do. That's part of it. That's part of it. It's how you feel about things. That's another part of it. It's, do you know your place in the world? That you are in fact a flower of earth, just like everything else that blooms. And here you are, you've bloomed with this consciousness for this period, at this time, in this moment. And this is what you have here as nature. And the rest is to who John is like, a combination of family. Um, it's all the things that have ever happened to me rolled up into this thing that I am now today. It's also not letting those things be in control, like because the things that happen to you end up becoming an impulse of some sort. Whether it's you were coddled too much as a kid, or you were beaten as a child, or whatever it is. That's only a part of your experience. It's not necessarily who you have to be. And then there is that belief that we're called to be more because humans don't have that understanding that we are, in fact, nature.
Yeah.
I, yeah, there was a. Are you familiar with Coco the talking gorilla, like that did the sign language and stuff?
No, I can't say I am. No.
Okay, when she was some of her last words to humanity was, "Coco knows that Coco is nature. Man does not understand that man is nature. Man is stupid. Man wishes, or Coco wishes man would understand." And I'm like, I heard that actually very recently, and I was just kind of blown away by that. Um, a couple years ago, I actually had that grand feeling. It was when you could see five planets in the sky. They lined up going across. You could see, I think it started with Mars, then Jupiter, then Saturn, then Mercury, then Venus. And it's the only time in my life I've ever seen it like that. But standing right here on the face of Earth, and I could see all the planets out there, it's like I actually knew for the first time where I was. Like it felt whole and real where I was.
Like
And I
anchored
was
in a
like,
good way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like man has forgotten how to look up and be a part of that.
Yeah.
We're so busy in this world where we control the light, we control the water, we control all these things. And when something is out of control, like a hurricane or something like that, it just drives man to madness that he can't control it.
Yeah.
So I just think that I'm a wellspring of consciousness that's here in this moment. This is the moment of eternity that I get to spend as this little bloom of consciousness right here. And it's just the coolest thing to appreciate that and be a part of it. And I never could have done that before. Never could have done that before.
Before your injury.
Right,
Uh,
right.
yeah.
Never could have done that before my injury. That the injury is literally the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's wild. That I'm writing a book at the moment, and that's like the last thing that I wrote in it. That my injury was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's
Uh,
awesome.
because I came to understand it in a similar way. You know, the depth at which you can experience life and also and human connection, which is obviously we're all interconnected in nature,
Hmm.
but the gratitude and the depth of appreciation for it all is something that I don't think I could have ever reached without this. You know,
Right.
because like you said, I I was just driven by impulse a lot of the time. But yeah, that's crazy that you said it's the best thing that's ever happened to you, and I think that's a when you can reach that point, it's incredible because there's
Yep.
a lot of people who things happen to them, and like you were
Yeah.
saying with
Yeah.
with your son when you were calling the police, he was like, "Would you do that to me?" And you said, "No, I'll do that for you." And
Yeah.
it's like things either happen to you or they happen for you, and it's up to you to decide which one that is.
Right. Right.
And you are very wise.
Well,
Much
thank you.
respect. It takes a lot to look that far inward and also that far outward as well.
Right.
So that's pretty unique, man. So it's very impressive, and I love your pillars as well. So you're taking them into your rolling to win program.
That's right. Yep.
In 26 days, it opens.
Right. Yeah. I'm doing like I've got the beta group in right now, so
Oh, okay.
we're yeah. So, um, as I something may change, something may not change. It all depends on what effects it has. Just because I think it's a great idea doesn't necessarily make it the greatest idea. But I'm very open to change, and I'm very open to criticism. So. That's something that I used to never be either. I was not an open-minded person, I guess, but being open is a huge thing. I recommend probably everybody takes the Jordan Peterson personality quiz to
Yeah.
see like where you rank on certain things, and that sort of helps guide uh, toward which pursuit that would suit you best, even
Yeah.
like
Okay.
knowing your personality type. No, it will, and it does have certain, like, based on where you got a higher score, there's certain things you'll excel at and certain things you won't, just based on your theta programming, your original programming, I guess.
And that was very helpful for you. Uh,
Yeah, I think so. Um, I interestingly enough, I believe that depending on where you are in life could change the score, right? Because I got very high in openness, but then like I could think 10 years ago, there's probably no chance I would have scored very high in openness. I probably would have scored very high in neuroticism or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's the idea, isn't it? It just gives you a snapshot of where you are right now, and maybe the things that you
Hmm.
could work on within
Right,
yourself.
right.
Because
Yeah,
there's
it's good stuff.
we're always doing something, no matter how slight, to sabotage ourselves and our
Hmm.
outcomes, and maybe even the people around us. But if we're aware of them and open to changing them, then that's,
Right,
I think, the best place you can be at. We're never going to be perfect. No one can live up to the ideal of God. That's why it's an ideal. It's
right.
something to be pursued, not something to be achieved. But
Hmm.
I don't know, man. It sounds like you're on your purpose. You're very, very open to new ideas. Sounds like you're very confident in who you are, and you know very well who you are, which is incredible. Um,
Thank you.
and yeah, I think your program's going to go really well, man. And I know it can be daunting to start something like that because you're like, oh, this is a little piece of myself. Like you pour a lot into it, and
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like, oh, what are people going to think of this? Are they going to like it as much as, like, are they going to think it's as good as I do, or have I completely missed the mark? And
I,
it's
I tell you, I have to be real. Check this. So uh, I got into acting,
Yeah,
right? And I've got an agent. Well, I've got two different. One agent is non. Uh, gosh, I can't think of the word right now. Non-exclusive, and the other agent is an exclusive agent. So it's just different regions of the country. And what I've learned is that doing something is better than doing nothing. Period. And the critiques that you get will never be as bad as you think they are. So that is what really gave me a huge boost of confidence, was getting involved in that and going and performing in front of people, and people just enjoy being entertained,
yeah,
and which not for the program's different. The program's same deal. It's like I'm really just doing the best I know how to do to get somebody go. And but I think that in that it's definitely more than somebody who just has an idea that's scared to even try. And I
yeah.
say to somebody who's scared to try, just do it, because you don't really know how it's going to turn out. And even if it turns out that somebody says, "Hey, look, this thing is utter trash," then at least you know what utter trash looks like.
Hey, and you can start moving upwards from utter trash, can't
That's
you?
right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of fear, and fear is what will hold people back from being who they can be.
Yeah. It's almost all fear, isn't it? It's fear people
Hmm.
are going to reject us, fear, if we lay down boundaries that people aren't going to want to be around us, fear that we won't be good
Right.
enough.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do is guided by fear. And yeah, I think if you can get out of that shadow of fear and have that confidence in yourself, like, even if these things come to pass, I'm good.
Mhm.
Like, I know who I am and I'm good in that. And so
Right.
if you can get to that point, you're set. But to get to that point, you've got to lean into the fear to start with, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. That's when the scary stuff starts. Yeah. My son, the one on the drugs and all that, who was, he's not anymore, but um his mother's family is very critical on everything. Like, they tell him something. Like, when I went to the bodybuilding competition, my first one, this was he'll never do well, he'll never win, he'll never do this, he'll never do that. That's what they told him.
About you.
Right, right. And I
Yeah.
was like, see, son, what we're going to do, who cares what they say? We're going to go down here. We're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And I took him with me, and it was a bikini competition. So they had the pro bikini girls there
Yeah.
as well. And he got to be backstage. He was losing his mind. He was like, Dad, what?
I
I
want
was
to be
like,
a
just go talk
bodybuilder.
to him. Don't be scared. Yeah, yeah. It was a crazy time. I mean, I'd never seen so many women in bikinis, and I've been to like some nice beaches, but this was a whole different thing. Um, and even they were giving me compliments, like
Yeah.
after I got off stage. So I thought that was incredible. It really
Yeah.
felt good. Really felt good. And yeah, so he comes from a whole group of naysayers, but people don't want you to do the best you can because they ain't doing the best they can.
Yeah.
So you can't let their fears for you drive you either.
Well, that's all they're doing when they say you can't do this or you're not going to succeed at that. What
Right,
they're often saying is, I hope you don't, because that's going to make me feel shit about myself because I'm not
right,
doing that.
right. Yep.
It's, um, and I think, that's one of my core values that I've outlined in my book is that the number one is wanting better for everyone around me,
Right.
and I think it's,
Mm-hmm.
if you truly want that, if you can celebrate when the people around you, or even anyone, like random people, like I'll celebrate random
Right.
people on their accomplishments. I'm like, that's awesome for them. But if you've got a close group of people around you, it's only a matter of time until your wins start coming in as well.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
no way you can be around a group of people that all want better for each other and you're the only one that doesn't improve. You know what I mean? Like, it's,
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus instructed us to rejoice when those rejoice and mourn when those mourn.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that's one of the hardest things, is to be happy for somebody. I mean, uh, because I guess the crowd that I ran with was the crowd that's like, who do they think they are driving a Mercedes, right? Instead of admitting, like, man, that's a nice car. I would like to get a car like that.
yeah,
How much work do I have to put in to get a car like that? It's immediately that hater tater salad, right? Which is like, the who do they think they are? Or
yeah,
that they think that their poots smell like roses or whatever because they drive a Mercedes. Anyway, that's how that group always was with them. And I've really cut people like that out of my life. Like, if you're not happy for other people, then I don't really want you to bring your negativity into my life.
and that behind your back, if you're doing well, there's a chance that they're
Oh
saying,
yeah,
who
yeah. I
does this
mean,
guy think he is?
right, right.
Yeah,
Which, that part doesn't really confront me as much. Like, that used to
yeah,
scare me, but it doesn't scare me at all now.
yeah.
Go
Okay,
ahead and say whatever you got to say.
yeah,
More power to you. You
yeah,
know, if you wanted to get in the gym, I still help you. Like,
yeah,
whatever. If you're ready for a change,
yeah,
just be willing to help those I mean, because people have to start somewhere, and maybe they're in a bad place, and that's just how they think. You have to learn how to not think like that.
That, that can be really hard. It's the envy, like why do they
Mm-hmm.
have it and I don't? Like you hear people like with your
Right.
Mercedes example, like, oh, they must be a
Yeah.
drug dealer. Like they must have cheated to get that.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's
Yeah.
there's yeah, like, oh, they must be a bad person because I'm a good
Mm-hmm.
person and I don't have that, you know.
Right. Right.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like
That's an ill-gotten gain
yeah.
somehow.
Um but when you can just be genuinely happy for the people around you and people that are doing well, um, I'll celebrate everyone's wins, no matter how like relatively small they are. Like it's a big win for
Mhm.
them if
Right.
it's if they haven't had many wins, and other people might think it's a small one. I'm like that. That's big for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I won't take up too much more of your time, man. I know you gotta
Yeah.
give the dog a run, but it's been awesome to chatting to you, man. And I guess on a finishing note, I might put you on the spot a little bit here. But I guess one piece of advice you would give to anyone who's starting out on this self discovery, self improvement
Hmm.
journey, or even two pieces. You don't have to limit it to one.
Yeah. Yeah. So starting out on the journey. So if you're starting out on the journey, I would almost put you in the spot of you're thinking about making a change. And if you're thinking about making a change, then that change is ready to happen. You are ready for it because you're thinking about it. And now you have to identify maybe what's holding you back. Is it fear? Is it that somebody will say something about you? Is it just whatever it is? Um, push past that and get started because nobody can stop you from just picking up a book to get better. So pick up a book to get better. 12 Rules for Life with Jordan Peterson. That's a great book to start with. Go read it by yourself where people can't see. I mean, you'll get better just from reading it,
Yeah,
you know? Um, yeah, but that's initially it. Just get started. Get started. Because if you feel like you need to change, then you do.
you just got to
Then you
knock over
do.
that first domino.
That's it. That's it. And if you don't get started now, then when are you going to get started? When are
Yeah,
you? Like I'll get started if this happens, or I'll get started when this happens, or I'll get. No, you won't. You just get started now. Get
yeah,
started right now. Yeah, and that's gonna get you through the hump. And if you need help, just somebody to talk to, you can go to rollingtowin.com. You can book an appointment with me. We'll sit and chit chat.
yeah,
I'll help you get started. Um, and I don't mean that from any perspective of I've got something to sell you or I've got a magic solution, but I'll listen to you and I can help you by listening to you.
yeah. It a lot of people do just need to be listened to because
Right.
when you speak your fears out loud, you kind of realize how trivial, I guess, they are a lot of the time. Like, you
Hmm.
speak it, you're like, oh, I'm halting the progress of my entire life because I'm worried about what a couple of my friends might say,
Yep. Yep.
and just by saying that, you're like, oh, am I really going to hold back my entire life because I'm worried about the opinions of two people?
Right. And sadly enough, maybe your friends aren't the best for you right now.
Yeah.
And
But
that's a hard one to deal with. Is like, but for me, when I moved here, like all the people that I used to hang with when I were in my 20s, right, running around being stupid, they're dead or in prison. So like
all right.
that, it's like, yeah. So like, there's none of that. Um, um, my friends that I have now are mostly like other wheelchair users, because we have an understanding with each other usually,
Yeah,
and most everybody in this community is trying to get better somehow.
yeah,
And so that's the most uplifting group of people that I've ever been around in my life.
it's incredible, isn't it? There's some awesome people in
Right.
this community, and
Yeah, for sure.
we all end up on the same path because, or similar paths, because we avoid all the ones with stairs. So,
Yeah, that's my worst enemy right there. Stairs. Foiled
uh,
again.
yeah. No, that's good advice, man. That's good. Uh, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate your
Absolutely. Thanks
time.
for having me.
Uh,
Thanks for having me. Yep.
yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. We'll chat again soon.
Absolutely. All right, Danny. We'll see you, man.
All right. See ya.